Coach Corey Wayne, and this is my video coaching newsletter. And the topic of this newsletter is going to be avoiding rejection and friend zone. Well, I got 3 emails I'm going to go through with you today. But before we get into the first one, I got a quote that I wrote on this particular topic. And then we're going to jump right into the first guy's email. And the quote says, "It's a turn-off for both men and women when a potential lover speaks, thinks, and acts in ways that communicate that they place a higher value on seeking your approval than staying congruent with who they really are. Weak people who don't value themselves seek to build themselves up by mistakenly believing that winning the affection, attention, and love of another makes them valuable. In other words, they look for self-validation and the approval of others. In order to be loved, you must first love yourself enough to walk away from people who are rude, disrespectful, unappreciative, and those who try to intimidate you into compromising your values and dignity. Becoming someone else's doormat is the quickest way to rejection, loss of respect, friend zone, and losing the love that you seek." Well, what you're going to see, the subtle interplay in these 3 emails that I'm going through, is situations where guys, in essence, have placed a higher value on the object of their affection than the object of their affection has placed on them. And when people do that, it leads them to all kinds of behaviors, changing their opinion to match the other person. That person disrespects them and they don't speak up and say, "Hey, you just crossed my boundary, that's not cool." And being able to just completely walk away from that person when someone's rude, disrespectful, manipulative, or just an asshole. Because the person who doesn't value themselves, their whole mindset is approval-seeking behavior, and they won't stand up to the other person when they start to walk all over them. I mean, all of us, everybody watching this video at some point in their lives has met somebody that's very insecure and pretty much lets you walk all over them and disrespect them. And not only you, but they allowed other people to do it to them. And you just can't, we don't respect other people that are like that. Because in other words, they're constantly acting like, "I'm not worthy and I don't deserve to be around you." So let's jump into the first guy's email. He says, "Hey coach, here's the scoop. I've been seeing this girl that I met online for a few weeks now. She's got a lot of the qualities that I look for in a partner, and all of our dates so far have been fantastic. After just our second date together, she invited me back to her place. However, we didn't have sex, although things did get pretty physical up until she slowed things back down." And this is where it's important to know my book, because I talk about this. You got to take 2 steps forward, and then when you encounter resistance, you take 1 step back. The average guy, when they encounter the first bit of resistance, they just give up. What you got to realize is when you're overeager, when you're too eager to make something happen or to get laid, basically, and you're ignoring the fact that the woman that you're with is not at that same place that you are, you've got to back off and respect that boundary. 3, 4, 5 minutes later, then you start making physical contact and slowly escalating again. And what you'll notice as you do this and you get more comfortable doing this is that each time you get a little further with her. I've discussed this in numerous videos, and I also talk about it in my book, so I'm just not going to go through it. But the problem that this guy has is that he just did not, he read the book maybe once, and so he didn't know it that well. And so when he encountered this problem, I mean, it's 260-something pages. This is what happens. You don't know what to do, and you have a great opportunity, and you're rushing things because you're eager. You know, for a lot of guys that are in this place, that they're just not a lot of very experienced in this area, and they tend to be overeager and they tend to rush things. And all the woman's wanting to do is to slow things down and be able to stop things if she feels like you're moving faster than she's ready to move. He says, and we ended up having this deep conversation, sharing some pretty intimate details about our lives. I've read your book and distinctly recall the importance of maintaining mysteriousness, so I made it a point to let her do most of the talking. Nevertheless, it was a good conversation, and we finished the night by watching a movie before I went home. So it sounds like you encountered resistance. She said, whoa, slow down, and you just gave up. That tells me you weren't prepared. And this is what happens when you don't read the book. You got a great opportunity here, but since you don't really understand it, you encounter resistance and you're not really sure what to do, and you back off, you go into logic and reason mode and try to talk, and then you go and become her therapist or her emotional tampon, if you will. Instead of just taking it as a cue to just slow your roll a little bit. Slow down. Stop being so goddamn impatient. You will get there. Since I knew we'd both be traveling out of town the next week, I didn't send her any texts or call. My plan was to get a hold of her once I knew we were both back in town and set up our next date from there. But before my trip was even over, she reached out to me and wanted to know how I was doing. Well, that's definitely a good sign. That tells me at this particular moment in time, her attraction was pretty high for you, so she's reaching out. So he says, I kept it short, and I casually set up our next date. Then I let her know I had to run. Well, that's perfect. You're doing great so far at this point. She texted me again the next day at lunch, but since we already had plans set up later for the week, or in the week, I simply responded once and left it at that. By the time our date rolled around later that week, I could tell she was excited to see me. See, what's going on here is you're doing a good job. You're setting the date. It's in the future. You're not acting needy. You're not impatient. You're not in a rush. You're not acting desperate in any way. You're acting like a guy who meets women like this all the time and things progress well. He says we had a fantastic time, and she even hinted that I should maybe invite her along on my 4th of July weekend trip. But since it was only our 4th date, and I was still getting to know her, I held back. All I would have just said is, as we get a little closer, we can talk about that. Yeah, definitely. I'll keep that in mind. I appreciate that. I appreciate the fact that you want to go. That'd be kind of cool. He says at the end of the night, we wound up back at her place, but once again, we didn't have sex. You should have been reading the book in between those dates, dude. He says, despite the strong sexual chemistry between us, she made it a point to slow things down right before things could get interesting. So I didn't push the matter. In other words, you gave up. In other words, you took 2 steps forward, you encountered resistance, and then you just stopped. You didn't back up, you didn't do anything. You went into friendship mode. And we watched another movie, we enjoyed ourselves, and then I went back home. I called her the next week to see what her plans were, and we had a good chat. However, she did let me know that it was a bad week for her date-wise because she was going to be hosting a friend out of town from Wednesday through Sunday. But she mentioned she might be available Sunday night and that we should play it by ear. So I left her alone that week and didn't text her until Sunday to see what the story was that evening. Wrong. Bad way to go, dude. A man who values himself is never going to take a maybe date. He's not going to agree to that. So a man who respects himself and loves himself is never going to agree to a maybe date. He's going to say, you know what? You got a friend coming into town. It's obviously not a good week for you. Why don't you give me a call later on in the week when your schedule frees up and we'll get together. We can plan something then. And then you back off and you wait for her to reach out to you. Because at this particular point, what this tells me is something has changed. Something is different. And part of the reason is the way you were just being compliant and going along with what she wanted. And you went from being the playful, charming lover, potential lover, I should say, to acting like her friend when you encountered resistance. And then you did something that communicated that you placed a higher value on spending time with her than she did with you. When she said, well, let's talk on Sunday. A guy who's got lots of options and is busy is not going to agree to wait till Sunday and call somebody to find out whether or not they're going to hang out. He's just going to say, you know what? It's obviously not a good weekend for you. Let's just do it another time when you know you're free and we can make plans then. And then he calls her the following week. Or he tells her, hey, you know what? Well, when your schedule frees up, why don't you give me a call and we can plan something then? And she's like, sure. She's already showed you that she's willing to reach out to you. And this is where the power starts to flip and you make yourself look needy and desperate. And just the fact that you're going along with this BS instead of saying, I'm not going to wait till Sunday afternoon just to find out that you may have plans with somebody else. That communicates that you perceive yourself to have a low value. And she responds accordingly by saying, you know what? Why would I want to hang out with this low value guy? And therefore, you get in touch with her on Sunday and she says, no, she's busy. She's got to hang out with her friend. She was already telling you that. Oh, I'm unavailable. I don't have any. If she had a really super high attraction level, she would have made time to see you. Or said, well, I can't this weekend, but I really would like to see you. How about early next week? That's what she would have done. But obviously something happened on that third or fourth date that caused you to lower your value in her eyes, because her attitude's completely different now when you call her to set the next date. And now it's just pretty much she's not that interested. So she said that unfortunately she had to take her friend to the airport. Oh, and that her flight out was super late. Sure. I then asked what she was up to the following night, but she never responded. You got blown off, dude. It's now, because now you're like, oh, please, will you see me? Now you're like needy and desperate. You just handle it inappropriately. Again, these are things that I talk about in my book, and since you didn't know the book very well, you got rejected, dude. He says, it's now been a few days and I still haven't heard anything. Furthermore, I noticed she's been much more active again on her online dating profile. In other words, it sounds like she's already made up her mind about you and that she ain't interested at this point. I made it a point to keep dating other girls on the side, and that it's definitely helped me maintain my distance and not get too hung up over her. But I do like her a lot, and so I wanted to get some feedback from you and see how I should handle the situation moving forward. Well, at this point, I would never call or text her again. She still hasn't responded to your last text. Why would you want to continue to pursue somebody that's already ignored your last text? That's rude and that's disrespectful, and that's the exact kind of behavior that I talked about in the quote I shared at the beginning of the video. You walk away from situations like this where she's not even bothering to reply to you. You took her out 4 fucking times and she can't even reply to you? Fuck that. I'll replace you. That should be your attitude. You're just going to go out with somebody else. So if you ever hear from her again, assume she wants to see you and make the next date. But I wouldn't ever call or text this girl again and chalk it up to experience. And pull the book back out and read it 10 to 15 times like I say to read it, because this is going to continue to happen. You're going to continue to make unnecessary mistakes until you learn the material. So let's get into the second guy's email. This particular guy I've had a phone session with, and I've answered. I've done a few email coaching sessions with him as well that I've also answered in previous videos. He says, hey coach, I can see where I'm going around and around in circles, so thanks for calling me out on that. I have less than 2 to 3 days before I fly home, and I managed to stick it out without texting her, as you said. This particular guy, he's been out of town, and his ex-girlfriend got in touch with him when he was out of town to basically say that she had broken up with her boyfriend. And so he said, well, he told her when he was going to be back in town, and she told him that she will give him a call when she knows he's back in town, and they'll get together then. But he's been having the desire to reach out to her and call her. And again, those are the type of things that communicate that you have a low value in your own eyes. In other words, it's approval-seeking behavior. And these are the behaviors that you really have to work to overcome, because this is the core root of what causes most guys to get rejected with women. And women, for that matter, to get rejected by guys. When somebody mistreats you, you don't just keep coming back for another serving of that. You walk away because you value yourself and you love yourself and you're not going to tolerate it. I'm expecting to hear from her in these next few days to make plans for when I'm back like we agreed. If I don't hear from her, then I won't contact her again. Now you're talking. Maybe she will text me next week or in the future. But hey, easy come, easy go. Yeah, that's the attitude you got to have. You got to be non-attached to it. She said she was going to get in touch with you. She knows when you're going to be back in town. And if she really means what she says, guess what? she'll reach out to you and call you or text you exactly like she said she would. Many times women will say they're going to call you on a certain day or at a certain time, and they don't, just to see how you react. And if you've done a lot of things to make yourself look weak and needy or desperate in the past, I'd say there's a good chance she's not going to call you when she says she's going to, just to see how you react. He says, either way, I will never reach out to her ever again unless she texts me like she said she would. Exactly. It takes two people who want to be together in order for something to happen. He said, if I don't hear from her, I will not feel bad about being away for work. I was busy, and that's life. She's been busy and blown me off before numerous times. Exactly. So why go back to chasing her when you just get jerked around anyways? Because when you don't value yourself and you don't respect yourself, you're inviting the other person to jerk you around. And this is how you break the pattern, by just not behaving that way anymore. He says, if she can't wait, then I don't have the time to care. What she is doing is her business. She blew her chance to have me as her boyfriend, and that's that. What I'm doing is my business. I've taken her off my subconscious pedestal and reframed it to just see her as another option for hooking up, nothing more. Yeah, because this particular woman's a liar, she's a cheater, she's dishonest, and he was trying to make her into girlfriend material. He's trying to make a hoe into a housewife in essence, and that just ain't going to work. He says, what the fuck is it with the advice online from women coaches? All these other sites are saying guys should chase girls, etc. I did it because I had delusions of the one, but in the past I never chased, and the girls came running as I was indifferent. Because you acted like a man who had high status, high value. And therefore you got rewarded with the attention and the affection of these women. But when you act like a low status man, you get blown off, you get jerked around, and you get flaky behavior. The other sites should be banned as they are messing with men's lives. Well, a lot of women don't really understand what they respond to. They have what they think they want because society has told them that that's what they should want. But at the end of the day, they respond emotionally to what they respond to. I mean, I teach it in my book. I teach it in my videos. It is what it is. I teach human nature. And when you understand that, literally, women become... You can set your watch to it. I mean, they're predictable, and I mean that in a good way. Same thing with men. Like, when you understand these truths and you apply them, you're going to get the desired results in the other person. He says, yes, she's not girlfriend material. I hear you. I got it. It's imprinted. I have been obsessed, and I've not let go of the reality of all the bullshit she put me through and kept rationalizing her actions to suit my interest level rather than reality. I wrote down 2 lists, pros and cons. All I had in the pros was hot and nymphomaniac. Well, all right then. It's great sex. Hence why I say she's a great sex playmate. That's all I could come up with. On the cons, I came up with liar, cheater, dishonest, mental issues, attention whore bitch, secretive, ex-drug addict, daddy issues, broke. I would never go into business with her. If any of my mates acted like her, I wouldn't be friends with them. She's a user, she has a princess attitude, she's manipulative, and not flexible or reliable. So yeah, I think that clarified reality for me. Not exactly the traits I had in mind for the future mother of my children. Now listen to what he says here. This is so true. He says, hell, if a babysitter had those issues, I wouldn't leave my kid around her. Now you're talking. That's something to think about, dude. Is it just me, or do us guys bullshit ourselves about girls' actions due to their looks or what? Well, it really comes down to loving yourself and valuing yourself. And when you love and value yourself, you won't put up with bullshit like this. You won't ever date a woman like this in the future. I mean, yeah, you may continue to hook up occasionally with this ex-girlfriend of yours until you find somebody that's really of high quality, if that's what you want. But at the end of the day, when you realize you don't have to put up with this kind of crap, you can let some other dude put up with it. Why? Why would you want to mess around with it? This is part of growing as man. This is part of becoming all that you're capable of becoming. He says, looks fade and all our pros will fade, but the cons will always be there. Such an eye-opener. It's like the fucking Matrix is opening up to my eyes from learning off of you. Above all, I need to draw a line in the sand of what I want in a girl to be a potential partner. Looks matter to me, but it has to be plus additional qualities, not just looks. Exactly. Let some other sap get dicked around by her. I'll say I'll just fuck her if she contacts me, and be ready for when Mrs. Right finally comes along, and apply your methods accordingly. Thanks, Coach. You rock. Well, you got the right attitude. Now, this particular guy went from being obsessed with trying to make this girl into the perfect girlfriend and future wife. And he wasn't really accepting at first of the reality. She just wasn't good girlfriend material. So let's get into the third and final email. This guy says, hey coach, here's my deal. I'm 46, professional, divorced 8 years, 3 kids, 1 in college. And I met a 44-year-old divorcee. She has 3 grown-up stepkids. We hit it off well. We fell in with each other head over heels very quickly 3 months ago. Here's my issue. I experienced ED, erectile dysfunction. So you had a problem getting the general to stand at attention. I've been taking a high dose of 2 cholesterol medications and Adderall, but my condition regulated itself, but was causing my ED so badly, I decided to get off of it and deal with it homeopathically. I eat healthy and exercise regularly. I'd gone to my doctor, annual physical, and she and I were frustrated with all of this, as I either couldn't stay hard long enough, or if I did, I rushed it and came too soon. Premature ejaculation. Well, I did a video, I don't know, a year or 2 ago called How Men Can Have Multiple Orgasms, and I highly recommend that you watch that, because that will definitely help you stay harder longer. And just because you blow your wad, you won't lose your erection. But you got to train your body to do that. It takes practice. He says a few things about our sex life situation. Obviously, this made us both frustrated. That's understandable. But I noticed she used her dildo regularly, as she kept it next to her bed, and it was huge. He says I'm average size. And she didn't like oral sex very much, which I excel at. If you really excelled at oral sex, but she doesn't like oral sex, either getting it or receiving it. Well, if she doesn't like receiving it, then maybe you're not as good at oral sex as you think you are. Better Sex Video Series did some great DVDs on how to become a master at cunnilingus. And they've got DVDs for both men and women, and they're really good. The actors and actresses aren't very attractive, but it's a clinical type of videos, and they're taught by doctors that know this stuff. That's what they study, and they're very good. So if you want to improve sexually, I would highly recommend you can Google Better Sex Video Series and get some of their DVDs, because you'll learn some good stuff there. So he says, I excel at oral sex and sometimes finish her with using her dildo, which I didn't mind, but it put a crimp in things, as you can imagine. With the aforementioned issues, it made for sometimes less than satisfying lovemaking, although we were very happy otherwise and had amazing chemistry together. Or so you thought. We had a break of about a week, and we had a little contact during the time. I had family in town, and when I addressed her distance, she said that she was being distant as she felt we were missing the physical connection in our relationship, which she said doesn't change or come with time. I agreed the physical connection was suffering, but when I explained about the medical conditions, she was very agreeable and even helpful as to how to address it. I told her I needed a few weeks for this to clear out of my system, as I had been off these on these meds for a few years, and it would take some time for them to detox out of my system. After barely a week, I could tell that I was getting my morning wood back. Well, that's encouraging. I hadn't had those for a while, and my hard-ons were starting to increase and last longer, but still not 100%. We went out to dinner after a week after this, which was last Saturday, and spent the weekend together. When I brought up possibly meeting my kids at some point, she started crying unexpectedly and said that she was still missing the physical connection, and while she might be throwing away the best relationship she's ever had, she didn't feel anything would change with more time. What should I do? Well, there's obviously other things going on here besides the physical intimacy part. And that's why reading my book would be really helpful for you to self-diagnose. I could not speak, just like I'm having a hard time speaking. It's like my fucking voice has been going. So it's like I'm doing the best I can to get through this fucking video. It's really hard, so thanks for your patience. He says, literally, and I was numb and a first for me. She cried and cried, but what could I say? I wasn't going to beg or grovel, and I was completely honest to the point of humiliation about my situation, which I thought she was supportive. Well, obviously she wasn't supportive of it. We went back to her apartment after we returned from dinner, and I helped with a task that I had promised to do, and with her crying, she said goodbye to me. I didn't contact her for 5 days. He said I had a dental implant extraction. Oh, that sounds pleasant. And then texted her, only asking how she was, not talking or mentioning about the breakup. See, this really communicates the problem with your behavior. It's not so much the erectile dysfunction, although that was a contributing factor. What the real issue here is you not valuing yourself. She put you in friend zone. She basically said, I don't want to try anymore. Now, a man who values himself and loves himself is going to say, you know what? I want to keep working at this, but hey, it takes two people to make a relationship work. And if you're unwilling to make the effort, give me a call if you change your mind. And then you walk and you never look back. It's just like I talked about in the quote, and I also talk about in my book. The strongest negotiating position is being able to walk away and mean it. And when somebody says they want to unilaterally change the terms of your relationship or tell you how awesome you are as a human being, but that they just can't find the time to spend with you, you just say, hey, you know what? I'm not down with that. That doesn't work for me. You got to let them know that they've crossed the line. And see, the problem here is she's crossed the line. She's unilaterally changed the terms of your relationship. But because you are seeking her approval and seeking validation of yourself in the fact that you want her to be with you, you're going along with this being mistreated in essence, being tossed aside like the fucking trash. She ditched you, and yet you continue to call her. What self-respecting, self-loving man would do that? Would James Bond do that? Absolutely not. This is the root of your issue, and this is what you've been doing since the time you started dating. He says she answered immediately, seeming happy, but was all short and sweet. In other words, she was short and sweet. It means she really didn't want to talk to you. She's over it. He says, that night, I saw that she's back on Match, and I haven't contacted her since. I'm crushed. Any ideas? I'm still working out and eating well, but this has hurt me bad. Well, the only thing that you can do at this point is chalk it up to experience. And like I said, reading my book would really help you self-diagnose and determine where you went wrong exactly, so you can correct your mistakes so you don't do them with the next woman. Because if you don't overcome this, if you don't change your behavior, the next woman's going to reject you for the same reasons. So, like I said, the only thing you can do at this point is to never call her, never text her again. If she ever reaches out to you, assume she wants to see you and make a date. And I would not go out of your way. I wouldn't take her to dinner or any of that bullshit. If she reaches out, just say, hey, great to hear from you. I'd love to see you. When are you free to get together? Oh, I'm free Tuesday night. Well, great. How about Tuesday night, you grab a bottle of wine, come on over to my house around 8, and we'll make dinner together. And only agree to get together if she wants to come over and hang out at your place. And if she goes, oh, let's go to dinner, let's meet out for drinks, or let's meet for coffee, then you're going to tell her this. Hey, it's been a really long week, and I'm just in the mood to hang, so if you don't want to get together and make dinner, give me a call in 2 to 3 weeks, and when things settle down, maybe we can do something a little more formal then. I would not go out of my way for somebody that ditched you like this. That's part of standing up for yourself. That's part of taking your power back and saying, you tossed me aside and unilaterally left our relationship. You didn't want to make the effort anymore. You're not going to say this to her, but this is why you're not going to go out of your way. If she wants to come over and make dinner together, then great. Just like I talk about in my book. Hang out, have fun, and hook up at your place. That's what you do. But otherwise, I'd say there's probably a good chance that you're never going to hear from her again. But you need to read my book. You need to learn the fundamentals and start changing your behavior and showing up, and stop all this approval-seeking, needy, desperate type behavior. When somebody jerks you around, when somebody's not understanding about the fact that you were on medication and it affected your performance in the bedroom, Booker, find somebody else, dude. That's the attitude that you need to have. That's called self-love. That's called self-respect. And the only way somebody's going to love you is if you love yourself first and you act accordingly. So if you'd like to get my help personally, the quickest way is to book a paid phone, Skype, or email coaching session. You can choose any of those options by going to my website and clicking the products tab at the top of your screen on any page on my website, and just follow the instructions. And I will talk to you soon.